Mama, Ma, Ma, Ma. You all know that cry, right? Mama! Listen, have you ever been so excited about something that all day long the anticipation has been building up in you until you finally get home, you see that person you want to run and tell it to, Mama! And their response is, You see, I grew up number 5 in line of 6 kids from my mother. I was kind of quiet and shy, my siblings were not. So their lifestyles required much more attention than my withdrawn life, which earned me a self-sufficient title at an early age, which I wasn't too fond of. I remember this particular day, I was trying to get her attention about something, as it normally went, Mama, Ma. She just told me to go away, as she had so many times before. So what this taught me was that my presence didn't matter, and that I was a nuisance. The irony is I didn't discover this until well into my 20s. After some deep digging in therapy, we got to this root that said, nobody loved me, nobody cared, and nobody wanted me around at all. That is the wound that I brought into this church. So when I came in for the first few times and walked in and out without any interaction from anyone, it just compounded that feeling. I felt ignored. See, being ignored registers in the brain the same way as does a physical injury. On a small scale, a stumped toe, to on a grand scale, a broken bone. And yeah, other people have the things that they need to work through, but there are times where we're definitely perpetuating the pain. As a part of the leadership development program thus far, I've had the pleasure of being immersed in many different departments. And I keep leaving from each with the same heightened awareness, which is at some point, we all have access to the people, both directly and indirectly. We're all planting seeds that will grow into trees under which we may never sit in the shade. See, in production, Justin showed me how he strategizes volunteers to evoke emotion and provoke growth for every person that he encounters. Sharla taught me about excellence in everything we do. She's so meticulous about the details because there's nothing to be left to chance on a Sunday morning, because Sunday is game day, where we cheer on our volunteers. So in this analogy, we function as coaches. So during the week is when we evaluate and plan. I watched how Marty was diligent to make sure everyone had what they needed so they'd be mentally clear to engage not just the volunteers, but every person that they encountered. So in the question of why the guest experience is everyone's job on staff, I believe it's a simple paired answer. 1, because everyone matters. And 2, we all resource volunteers. This should be a common heartbeat that echoes to every staff member in each department here, because every one of us are projections of hospitality. See, the concept of hospitality is the act of caring by welcoming a visitor, guest, or stranger. So while some of us may be gifted in this doesn't have to depend on a certain gifting that you have. See, the word hospitality comes from the Latin word hospice, which is derived from the word hostis, where we get our word host, which originally meant to have power. And a quote that I love, ironically, is from George Bush, and it means, to have power is to help people. As the church, we're very much part of the hospitality industry. But I propose that we have a power that the rest of the industry doesn't, and it's to connect the brokenhearted and the lost to Jesus. There's a ticker tape that runs in the souls of most people that says the church can help. And by choosing to be on staff at the church, you chose to become a part of this narrative. See, in Luke 12:48, it says, for everyone who's been given much, much will be required. So, what have you been given? I'm so glad you asked. See, you've been entrusted with providing a clear and simple path for all people to get to God and become a multiplying, unified body of Christ followers. We multiply through love. See, this church is our home, and whether we know them or not, every person that walks in through these doors should be considered our guest. So if hospitality is the crust of the guest experience, the nucleus of every discussion on the guest experience is this word, stranger. For our conversation, we'll define a stranger as someone completely unaccustomed to an experience, feeling, or a situation. But while that stranger is within our care, it's up to us to make sure that they don't feel like strangers. From the moment they see the signs on the streets, they are within our care. What do they see when they're parking? Where do they go for coffee, water? Where can they go when they feel lost? What do they hear during the sermon, the media, the music? The questions could continue, but they should all fall into the trichotomy of, as our guests, you are highly anticipated, eagerly awaited, and exceedingly loved. Welcome to our home. When you're ready, you can call this your home too. See, Jean Anthelme, a French lawyer from 1825, says to entertain a guest is to be answerable for his happiness as long as he is beneath our roof. To entertain a guest is to be answerable for his happiness as long as he is beneath our roof. He being the pronoun for all of us in this example. So, hospitality is the crux of the guest experience, and the core of hospitality is service. Because all of us equip and train volunteers for service to be kind to everyone, because everyone we meet is fighting a hard battle. This is especially true in our profession. See, we're a hospital to the brokenhearted, a refuge to the lost, a safe haven for the battered and bruised. It's almost impossible to be kind to others if you aren't being kind to yourself. Here, we're all on the front lines. But when you're on the front lines, disengaged, disinterested, and unhappy, we leave others feeling ignored, diminished, and marginalized. Purdue professor Kipling Williams says, being excluded is painful because it threatens our fundamental human needs such as belonging and self-esteem. So when we exclude people, it's painful, whether we intended to or not. Listen, have you ever stopped to consider that Chick-fil-A is just a chicken joint? You haven't, have you? So why when we think about Chick-fil-A, we think things like warm, welcoming, worship in the lobby, fresh flowers on the table? I believe it's because their founder, Samuel Truett, says we should be about more than just selling chicken. And he governed his organization under one arching belief that says we are helping people feel like they matter. And we should be a part of our customer lives and the communities in which they serve. He believed in his guest experience. I believe that Gateway can have a world-class guest experience. But to truly do this, we have to establish a culture of care. Care is at the core of every service initiative. It's the relationship between a guest and an employee, and how as employees we can care for our guests. See, Walt Disney was a master at creating a relationship between guest and employee. All of his employees had another persona when they were on stage. So whatever they brought to work, they had to leave it behind. And the main part of their uniform was a smile. A smile can make or break someone's day. See, a smile is cross-cultural, cross-genderal, cross-societal. To be simple, there's nothing since the beginning of time that has convoluted or diminished the meaning and the impact of a smile. See, in Munich, Germany in 2009, there was a study done on facial feedback, which means imitating a smile, that says that it triggers the circuitry of emotion and happiness in a person. So I think we should all smile. Listen, I want to tell you a story of a woman. She came to our church, and I saw her over in the corner. I recognized the tightness in her body because I felt it for so long. I recognized that PTSD monster that had plagued me more than half my life as it dripped from her skin like sweat in the boiler room of new and unknown people. So I smiled. She scoured. I smiled. She scoured. You get the interaction there. This went on week after week. Today she tells me that my act of kindness may have literally saved her life. And I tell her that her willingness to try and keep showing up is what gives me life. And isn't it the fullness of why we're all here on staff at Gateway? One way or another, we are creating a lasting experience for every person we encounter coming into our building. I say building because it doesn't become the church until you show up in it. Because we are the church. And I believe if this became our mantra, that I have no doubt it would shift the onus back from our guests onto us. As staff, it's on us to create an environment where our volunteers can thrive and people don't feel tolerated or burdensome, but instead accepted and loved. So what if we stop viewing people as the problem that they're carrying or the reason they came, but instead we saw them as guests in our home? If you're here on staff, your family has grown exponentially, and you haven't just moved into the neighborhood, you become part of the family, and you moved into the house. Every one of us together create a foundation upon which our volunteers build upon to make this house a home, so that more deeply wounded people, like this little boy walking around in a man's body, and this woman who's hurt, don't have to walk out feeling more hurt. They all have an opportunity to encounter Jesus and live a transformative life. So no matter your position in this church or in this life, taking care of one another is every one of our jobs.